Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 1980 horror film, holiday horror movie, Christmas Evil. Yes, I'm reviewing a Christmas film in May. It was the next film on the list, so that's pretty much why it's weird. It was definitely weird watching this movie and pretty much the middle of May, and I'm watching a Christmas movie. It was definitely very strange. Now, this is a movie I did review, like a very short review a long time ago that nobody barely watched, and I pretty much removed the video because honestly, this is a better review. You know, better camera, better setup, all kinds of stuff. But anyway, so Christmas Evil is a 1980 film and it's directed by Lewis Jackson. Now, Lewis Jackson, I don't think he did much after this. He also wrote the film. Yeah, he did a few films before this, something called The Deviates and something called The Transformation, A Sandwich of Nightmares. But Christmas Evil was his last film. I don't know how I feel about that because honestly, I think his direction in this is actually really well done. I think he did a good job directing this film. This is a movie that I actually liked all right for what it was. Nice little above average, low key chiller. Kind of like Taxi Driver, but for Christmas. That's what it kind of Taxi Driver for Christmas or Taxi Driver for Santa Claus. It's definitely had this psychological drama aspect to it. And that was in large part due to the performance by the lead, Brandon Maggart, who played Harry Stadling, who is this man who is obsessed with Santa Claus. He's so obsessed with Santa Claus that he pretty much becomes Santa. So it was an interesting psychosis, and it became an interesting character piece. It became an interesting character study. And for that alone, I don't mind the film because it definitely is unique. It's not like your typical slasher, and I think that's a problem too. I mean, what I mean by problem is I think that was a problem for people when it came out. It was advertised. It even mentioned Friday the 13th in one of the posters when it came out in 1980. So this film has been improperly advertised as a slasher, and it's not a slasher film. It's more of a low-key psychological drama with some horror elements. Now, it has some silly, stupid shit at the end, which I'll get to, which is a it definitely is a problem. Now, that's a problem I do have with the film, is its silly ending. The concept behind it, I don't mind. It's the execution is where things don't work out too well. Um, but anyway, this is a film that I can see why it's gotten a cult following over the years, because it is a very surreal, strange, weird little movie. And there's definitely an outlet for that kind of thing. And but this film actually there's a decent amount of things that it has going for it. I mean, the direction by Lewis Jackson is pretty solid. The writing by Lewis Jackson is I think it's pretty good as well. Um, the music by Joel Harris, Julie Hayward, and Don Christensen is, for the most part, I didn't really like because I thought it was really over the top and just too much and overbearing to the point where it just becomes laughable. But there were other points where it worked, but that was pretty rare. So for the most part, I'd say the score is a miss for me. But the cinematography by Ricardo Aronovich, I thought was really, really wonderful. For a film that has this sort of sleazy sort of concept, it definitely has some really beautiful looking shots. Um, for one, you have there's this wonderful shot near the end of the film where Harry is in a Santa Claus suit and he's walking down this pathway, and there's all these lit up Santa Claus, sort of plastic Santa Claus. It- plastic Santas, so to speak. You know those things that have like the plastic Santas that are lit up, and they have the sleighs. So you have these lit up plastic Santas with their sleighs, and they're all in a row, and it just creates this very surreal, ethereal uh, look to the film. And there's a lot of that throughout the movie. There's a lot of soft focus with the camera, and a lot of soft lighting, which definitely adds to this sort of ethereal, surreal quality that the film has. At times, it looks like a Norman Rockwell painting come to life. So the film definitely looks really good. The remaster that I saw it on by I think Severin looks really. I think it's Vinegar Films actually. Vinegar Syndrome. Uh, it looks really good. They did a great job remastering it. This is a film that is well shot. It's well edited. I know it's gotten criticism for its editing, but I think this is an instance where it has some weird edits, but it actually works in the film's favor because it adds a certain vibe to it that I didn't mind. I actually liked. But I could see why the film's not for everybody because there's not a lot that does happen. It does kind of just drag, but I guess if you're interested in the character and you're interested in seeing where things go with this guy who's obsessed with Santa Claus, then you can get kind of sucked into the movie. I definitely was. I can definitely say this is a film that definitely did grab me. And the few moments where it does have, bits of gore, violence are definitely shocking. Um, Nice little bit where a guy gets, these people are walking out of a church and Santa comes in and pokes the guy's eye out with a wooden soldier and then just starts hacking at people with an axe. So, and there's a nice little use of of a record that was playing a Christmas song, and the record started skipping, and that really kind of added to this very creepy feeling to the sequence where he just shows you the aftermath of what happened. These people were just killed by Santa, and then they're just laying there in the snow, bleeding, uh, and then you have this Christmas song, which is skipping. So it fits. Um, yeah, it's kind of a hard film to talk about because there are things that, for the most part, for what it set out to do, I think it did a good job. But it definitely is one of those films that I think you either like it or you don't, or you just that's kind of how I feel about it. Or it could be a film where you just don't have any desire to ever watch it again. But after watching this for the second time, I really learned to appreciate this movie for what it is. I do feel it's a little bit of a gem. Um, because I like the concept. I like the premise. Um, it's got some interesting sort of social commentary going on at times. It's also it's tragic and there are some certain sequences that really get under my skin. It's a type of real horror, the type of creepy that's more tied into reality than to fantasy or the realms of the supernatural. So, specifically, scenes where you have our lead who's freaking out and he's humming you better watch out, the Santa Claus is coming to town, and he's humming it in a very unsettling way that definitely gets under my skin. I would say Brandon Maggart's performance is very underrated. He did an excellent job playing a character who at times you feel sympathetic for him, but then at other times you're terrified of him because he's definitely mentally imbalanced. It was definitely, it's right up there with Robert De Niro's performance in Cape Fear for me when it comes to, a character, or even Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver. More like Taxi Driver, not Cape Fear, because Cape Fear is a little bit more over the top than this performance. A Taxi Driver, definitely, where you had this character who's just He's not all there, but there's some qualities about him that you do like, but then he goes further and further down the rabbit hole and then loses himself and loses his sanity in the process. Now, this is a film that pretty much came out, didn't do much in the box office. I don't think it really did much of anything. It's been released on VHS and a bunch of and different titles as well. Christmas Evil isn't the only title. I mean, the movie itself I think is called You Better Watch Out, which is an okay title. Christmas Evil just rolls off the tongue better than You Better Watch Out. But yeah, so there's been other titles and it's been cut and you've had different cuts that have come out on home video. It's been one of those films that's definitely been released and I think it was kind of in the public domain for a while and then Troma got a hold of it and then other companies got a hold of it. So yeah, it's been kind of a film that's bounced around from distributor to distributor. But I'm glad it got a remaster, and this Vinegar Syndrome release has a bunch of features and stuff, and I've seen it for cheap before. I just never got around to getting it because I was like, I don't remember seeing the film, but I guess when I sat down and watched this movie again, I'm like, yeah, I remember this. I did watch this before, and I didn't hate it then, and I think it was bad then, and I definitely don't feel that way here with the second viewing. But anyway, I'm just gonna go down through the plot synopsis and maybe talk about my thoughts on a few sequences that are listed in the plot synopsis, and then give you my final rating for the film. But anyway, uh, it starts out in suburban New Jersey in a flashback. Takes place on Christmas Eve in 1947, where young Harry sees his mother being sexually groped by his father, who's dressed up as Santa. Heartbroken, the child rushes up to the attic and cuts his hand with a shard of glass from a shattered snow globe. Now, this flashback, I don't get why the kid is so upset. He saw Santa giving head to his mom, and I guess that was too much. That was too horrifying for him to handle, and he broke a snow globe and then purposely cut his own hand. I don't really see. I do like the film, and I do think the script for the most part is pretty solid and pretty well built. But this is an instance where it isn't. Where I don't understand why his psychosis even stems from this. Because then it flashes, to present day, years later when he's an adult now, and he's obsessed with Santa Claus, and I'm like, wouldn't it be the opposite? If he was so traumatized by his dad dressed as Santa, what he thought was Santa Claus, giving his mom head, wouldn't he hate Santa Claus? Wouldn't it be the opposite? I don't understand why he loves Santa, why he wants to be Santa. I don't really understand that. I think the script could have done something different there instead of just little young Harry's traumatized by his mom getting head by Santa, getting head from Santa. Whatever. I guess maybe he wants to be the one to give some head. Fuck if I know. But anyway, 33 years later, he's an adult. He now works in a low-level position at the Jolly Dreams toy factory. That's something I liked about the movie as well, to show you the kind of working class sort of man and then the people who work at the toy factory. I mean, that was actually nice to see. You probably don't, I don't think very many jobs like that still exist because probably a computer or a robot can do it now. So, but I did like that sort of, it definitely has a kind of blue collar sort of vibe to it. And at home, he's taken it upon himself to become the next true Santa Claus. He sleeps in costume, his apartment is full of Christmas toys and decor, and from the roof of his building, he uses binoculars to spy on the neighborhood children to see if they're being bad or good. And that's really creepy. It's very definitely get pedophile vibes when when you see these sort of sequences. And so he spies on them to make sure if they're being bad or good. He sees two good children doing household chores and playing with their dolls, but he finds a third child named Moss Garcia rifling through a Penthouse magazine and cutting out a nude photograph. And I love he pretty much he runs back home after that because he's so offended. And he runs back home and writes Moss's name in his Bad Boys and Girls book. And Moss has already been in there. Like, he has a bunch of stuff he's already written for Moss. Like, he picks his nose, impure thoughts, all kinds of stuff. He kicked over a trash can. Basically, this kid's a dick. Um, but all these things he's saying are bad. I'm like, well, this kid's kind of, hey, this kid, what do you mean he's bad? He swears. Oh, he uses profanity? Oh man, I guess I'm a bad boy. I'm a bad boy. Um, like he's this kid's ahead of his time, man. Looking at nudie magazines, watching horror films on TV, swearing, doing whatever the hell he wants to. This kid's a bad boy, but hey, sounds like he's pretty cool to me. I'm not gonna judge him, but yeah. So I guess he thinks he's definitely bad. He's a bad boy. And so on his way home, Harry peeps in the window of a local bar, and he sees coworker Frank Stoller, who earlier that day had phoned in sick, requiring Harry to take his place in the assembly line. And Harry's working at the desk job, and he's gotten a promotion, but he misses being on the line, the production line, because he likes working with toys. So originally he thought, okay, I'll help this guy out because he's basically asked some people to take his shift so he could go on vacation with his wife. But of course he comes by and walks by a bar later, sees that he's there, and he's laughing and basically saying, oh, Harry's a poor schmuck, he fell for it. I don't have to leave until tomorrow. And this is where you get the scene where it's very unsettling, where he grabs one of these dolls that he has, and he goes home and he grabs the doll and he starts going so that's it gives me the heebie-jeebies because that's the moment where you can tell that he's not all there. And Brandon Maggart really sells that. He does a really great job uh, with this performance. And so he becomes angry. He breaks one of his dollhouse figures. And then the following morning, he phones his younger brother Phil, played by Jeffery DeMunn, which is really cool. Really uh, early role for Jeffery DeMunn, who would go on to be in films like the Blob remake, and he was in one of my favorite segments of the 80s Twilight Zone called Kentucky Rye. And he calls up his brother and cancels Thanksgiving dinner because Santa Claus is going to be on TV, and he wants to watch it alone because this is like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and Santa Claus is going to be on, and he wants to be alone so we could watch Santa. And I don't know what he's gonna do later. Maybe he's gonna jerk off. And then at the company Christmas party, the owner of Jolly Dreams announces that if production increases sufficiently, the company will be able to donate toys to the disadvantaged children at the Willowy Springs State Hospital. And afterwards, Harry's greeted by a coworker named Ben, who thanks him for taking Frank's place at the warehouse. And Frank introduces him to the new employee George. And this is where he realizes that this they're not really going to give toys to these mentally, handicapped kids. So he basically starts a mental break here. This is where he pretty much decides, all right, I'm going to become Santa Claus, because he says, I know your tune, like I know what tune you're playing now, and I really like that. How he this is the kind of how he explains why he's doing what he's doing. Like for years I didn't know what tune everyone was playing, and now I found my own tune, and so he thinks he's found the right tune, so to speak, which is in his crazy mind to become Santa Claus, and yeah, and that's what he thinks the tune is, because he's Looney Tunes, because he's crazy. So Harry realizes that people generally consider him a schmuck, a loser. He's constantly exploited by others. He has a nervous breakdown, becoming convinced that he truly is Santa Claus. Even he creates a Santa Claus outfit from scratch. He uses a woman's fur coat, which is very weird, definitely weird choice. And he decides that he begins making toys. He begins smelting toy soldiers with swords at attention and small axes that he's going to use to, I guess, kill the naughty people, because he's not all there. But then he also decides to do good things. So in his Santa suit, he breaks into the factory after hours to steal toys, which he wraps and loads into his van, which he's actually painted a sleigh on the side of it. And he drops them off at the mental hospital, which is honestly a really heartwarming scene. And this really kind of twisted, seedy 42nd Street grindhouse sort of movie. There's a really sweet, heartwarming scene where he gives these toys, gives these presents to the kids at this hospital. And the performance by the actor, who's pretty much he's psychotic now and thinks he's Santa, uh, by the lead, Brandon Maggart, is actually really well done. The whole thing where he's like, "Merry Christmas." It's some people consider it corny or schmaltzy, but I thought it was genuine. Like it actually warmed my heart. And then literally a scene later, almost pretty much the next scene or so, he fucking murders some people. So we couldn't have too much of that because because remember, this is Christmas Evil. This isn't, a traditional feel-good Christmas movie, which is part of me is like it's kind of out of character, but another part of me he's crazy, so it doesn't really matter, and I don't mind it because it definitely is something that it's definitely adds to the film. It's a very, like I said, it's a very surreal, strange movie, and it kind of has jumps in tone, which usually upset me. But this, it kind of works because the main guy is nuts, and it's a character piece following him around while he's going through this psychosis where he believes that he is Santa Claus. So, he Moss is a Garcia, he's a bad boy, so he leaves a bag full of dirt at his doorstep, and then he sees some people leaving midnight mass. They start taunting Harry about his Santa suit. They're being a bunch of assholes, and he murders them with an axe and pokes a guy's eye out. And then coincidentally, Frank and George are also attending the midnight mass, and they witness Santa's bloody crime. And later that evening, Harry sneaks into his brother Phil's home, destroys his nephew's Jolly Dreams gifts, and delivers the newly minted soldiers, as well as toys from his own workshop. He then breaks into Frank's home and murders him in his bed, leaving toys behind for his kids. He tried to kill him before by smothering him, but it didn't work, so he grabs the star off the tree and slices his throat. I know, it's kind of a pretty fucked up movie. It's like, I'm gonna kill this guy. Hey, kids, here's some toys. I mean, it does have, there is some little bit of black humor in this movie too, which I like, because earlier in the film, way earlier, before he becomes Santa Claus, he's walking around with his groceries, going to his apartment, and the neighborhood kids are asking him what he's going to do today, and he gives them an answer, and says, "What do you want?" And some of the, other kids, "What would you wish for?" And other kids are doing, typical kid stuff, and here's Moss being like, "A monthly subscription to Penthouse magazine." I just love how much that kid doesn't give a fuck. I love it. I love that That's in the movie. A kid who's just obsessed with Penthouse, and he's just like, I want a monthly subscription to Penthouse. Don't we all? Don't we all, kid? But going back to farther into the movie, kills with the guy who basically screwed with him, said take my shift, because you're susceptible and you're a schmuck and fuck you. And so he kills him with the star off the tree, gives his gives his kids some presents, and then Christmas morning, Jeffery DeMunn's character, Phil, begins to suspect something is seriously wrong with his brother, and he argues with his wife, Jackie. Their children are preoccupied with watching a television program and do not seem to be mind playing with their damaged and subpar toys. Which that's where it kind of gets sort of a little bit of social commentary, where it seems like the film has a sort of underlying sort of message where Christmas is kind of starting to be devalued, or the idea of what Christmas is all about is being forgotten about, and it's all about the gifts, and it doesn't matter what the quality of them are. It's got kind of an interesting sort of sort of not really subliminal advertising, but it's just an interesting sort of subset of the film. And so Harry returns to Jolly Dreams. He activates the assembly lines, and breaking even more toys in the process. He's really upset because nobody seems to give a shit about these toys for kids. Which that's kind of true in some ways. There's a lot of toys that are made for kids that are made cheap, and who gives a shit? Because they're kids' toys. Who cares? So that there's a little bit of that, definitely. And of course, before that happens, he spends some time at the Christmas party. He's kind of a guest of honor, and there's definitely some times where you have this really kind of these sweet moments, and but then you realize he's not sane, and then you have this really creepy scene where he has good intentions here, but then you definitely do realize if you didn't know before that he's off his rocker, you do now. And this is a very chilling scene, and mainly because of Maggart's performance, where he's talking to the kids, and he's like, but now, I want you to remember to stay good, boys and girls. Respect your mothers and fathers, and do what they tell you. Obey your teachers, and learn a whole lot. Now, if you do this, I'll make sure you get good presents from me every year. But if you're bad boys and girls, your name goes in the bad boys and girls book. And I'll bring you something horrible. You're like, ooh. That's just that way he's able to turn on a dime is impressive. And I also want to mention there's a fun scene where you have these cops have all these Santa Clauses that they basically arrested, because it's well known now that there's a Santa Claus killer going around killing people. And so people who dress as Santa Claus are getting arrested, and there's a lineup of all these people dressed as Santa. One of them is even like a black guy who's like, what is this jive shit? and so some of them were even arrested while they were trying to hand out toys to kids, which is really fucked up. But what I liked about the scene is you had two actors with little short cameo roles. And these two actors I wanted to point out because these are two actors that I definitely do remember because I've seen them before in other movies. And then in particular, so you have this, he's the main detective guy. I'm bringing up the full cast. It's an actor named Raymond J. Barry. He plays Detective Leeson. Now, he was in Cool Runnings, and he was the guy who used to be John Candy, and used to be with John Candy when he was, in the Olympics, and they had a falling out. And he was the guy who's kind of screwing them over, didn't believe in the Jamaican bobsled team. And he's the guy at the end of the movie who starts to slow clap. I was like, oh my god, it's the guy from Cool Runnings. And then he's been in other stuff as well. And then his coworker, uh, Detective Gottlieb is played by Robert Lesser, who I remember because he's Eugene's dad in the Monster Squad. He's the one who's like, "There's no such thing as monsters," and he goes in. There's a mummy in my closet. And he goes in. Ooh, there's a mummy. Monsters. So just for me personally, that was pretty fun to see those two in this movie because I'm like, wow, I recognize those guys. And honestly, there was a chance that there was going to be even more recognizable actors and actresses that were going to be in this film because there were a lot of them. Kathleen Turner, for instance. I mean, Kathleen Turner, she was turned down for the role of Harry's sister-in-law, and among the actors and actresses who auditioned for the roles in the film are Richard Bright, George DeZunda for Harry, Michael Beck, Larry Pine, and David Rash for Philip, Carla Borelli, Pat Hodges, Glenn Close, JoBeth Williams, and Lindsay Krause as Philip's wife Jackie. Moreover, Ellen McElduff, who plays Harry's mother, also read for the role of Jackie. I just wanted to point that out because I thought it was an interesting bit of trivia, especially JoBeth Williams and Glenn Close. Those are some pretty big names. Of course, they weren't big then, but they'd go on to be a lot bigger as the years went on, especially with Glenn Close. Now, so anyway, after this sort of police lineup stuff, and after Phil is worried about his brother, and Harry goes to Joey Dreams and activates the Stemblitz lines and breaks more toys. That night, he wakes up in a Santa suit and he drives off. His van gets stuck in the snow on a really great, wonderful, beautiful street. That's what I was talking about earlier, which sends him further into sort of a crazy state. The residents recognize him as a hatchet murderer, and the Santa Claus who killed people. And in a hilarious moment of randomness and just honestly, it just adds to the surrealness of this movie. They form a torch-bearing mob to pursue him. That was pretty funny. There's the whole thing. He's dressed as Santa Claus, and they got like torches, like they're chasing after him like he's Frankenstein. And he's like, "Oh!" And I'm like, "Get him! Get that Santa Claus! Get that son of a bitch!" And of course, before that, actually, he was handing out presents to kids, and one of the parents realized it was the killer, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill him myself." And the kids are like, "No!" And he's like, "Don't do this. These kids love me," because he's lost it. And I guess while he's running away from this mob, he actually slips and falls. The actor, he actually did slip and fall on the ice, and they kept that in the movie. Why? I have no idea. But so he slips and falls on the ice, gets in the van, finally gets to work, he frees it from the snow, and he drives to his brother's house. Phil quickly realizes that his brother is the killer Santa Claus that was announced on the news, and he proceeds to choke him unconscious. Because, of course, that's what happens when you realize that your brother's gone crazy and has killed people. You choke him out. He thinks he killed him, so then he tries to just load him into the front seat of his van. But then Harry wakes up and then just punches him in the face, which I thought was pretty funny, and then he drives off. And then during his escape, the oncoming mob forces him and his van off a bridge. And then you have this stupid-ass ending, which is really, really dumb, where his van drives off the bridge, and then it kind of looks like it's in slow motion, starts flying, and then it flies into the sky. It's stupid. Flies into the sky over the moon. Might as well fly over, the fork and the spoon or whatever the fuck and the cow. It flies over the moon, and then he's like, "Ho ho, Merry Christmas!" Like he's become Santa Claus, and his van is now now learned how to fly. I don't. I don't know what to say. I can't. But I get the director's intention was that this is a delusion by Harry, but and he says, "Oh, you're supposed to hear an explosion in the background." And I'm like, I don't really hear an explosion in the background. What I see is Jeffrey DeMunn's character trip over something, fall down, which is supposed to be on ice, like snow. But then when he trips, he basically reveals that the snow isn't real, and it's just like a tarp that looks like snow, which really doesn't help either. So ruins the illusion because he tripped over the tarp that's supposed to be the snow, and then he looks up and then he sees what we see is a van flying into the sky, and you're like, what the hell? This is this is so stupid. This is so dumb. Um, but I get the idea behind it. It just wasn't. This is a pretty serious film for the most part. There were some crazy, sort of surreal, sort of bits of black humor and some sort of, absurd moments. But for the most part, it's a pretty serious film, at least to me. So to have a fucking van flying in the sky at the end, that was kind of went off the rails. Um, it would have been better if you show that sort of hallucination, but then you see, okay, what really happened. The van crashed in the river and, Harry's dead. And then see the reaction of his brother or something, and then end credits. Because just showing what could be, could not be the delusion is not really the best way to go, because you can't really tell whether or not it's real or not. It's not supposed to be, but I can't tell by what's on the screen because the sound of the explosion isn't noticeable enough. And even the director admitted, like, if I were to remake the film, I definitely would do a better job with the ending. I absolutely, I agree with that because it hurts the film. The ending is just so laughably stupid and so ludicrous and silly that it just drops the film down a whole notch for me. But that's Christmas Evil. I don't really know what else to say about the film except I liked it. I liked it for what it was. I wouldn't call it a great film. It's not an excellent movie. It's definitely kind of dull at points. It kind of just plods along, goes from scene to scene. But the film is carried by a strong direction by Lewis Jackson, a decent screenplay, um, and a really, really powerhouse performance by Brandon Maggart as Harry Stadling. And Jeffrey DeMunn does a decent job in a little supporting role, but he's not asked to do too much. But as a psychological horror film, a character piece, a look inside the demented, twisted mind of a guy who's obsessed with Santa Claus to the point where he thinks he is Santa Claus, um, you can actually do a lot worse than this. And I haven't really found a film that kind of deals with this same subject matter that has done a better job. I mean, I'd probably say I like Silent Night, Deadly Night probably about as much as this, but that's because for a completely different reason. That movie's just so bad it's good. It's for me personally. But this, it's a I think it's actually a well acted, well directed, well crafted, well shot, low budget, chiller that I think is a little bit overlooked because it's lumped in with these slashers and it's not a slasher film. So if that's what you were expecting, then you're definitely going to be disappointed by the movie. I wouldn't say it's up there with Bob Clark's Black Christmas when it comes to holiday themed horror films, but I'd say it's definitely in the Silent Night, Deadly Night area, and it's definitely a hell of a lot better than the sequels to Silent Night, Deadly Night. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about the film except if I was going to rate it out of 5 stars, and I'd give the movie 3.5 out of 5. I think it's above average film. I think that a little bit of the slow pace kind of does the film in. The the fact that there's not a lot that goes on. The sort of questionable motive, why he has a psychosis, why Harry has a psychosis of wanting to be Santa Claus and his obsession with Santa Claus. because of what he saw when he was a kid. It wasn't really that well put together for me personally. And the ending. That's the main reason. Well, the ending is one of the biggest problems I have with the movie. It's just not executed very well. I get the idea, but it's not executed very well. It's pretty much a fail, if you ask me, because I'm just laughing my ass off at how absurd and stupid it is. And for the most part, it was a pretty straightforward, serious film. And then it's like, oh, I'm gonna fly off in a van. I'm just like, what the fuck? But anyway, I don't know what to say. I've talked about the film for 40 minutes. But I thought there was a decent amount of stuff that I wanted to say about the film. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the review, and I will see you guys later. See ya.